And I would love to hear your thoughts on the Aluula material, whether you see this as a material that's going to stick around forever. So Aluula, what do you think about Aluula, and what do you think about how it fits into the Moto X Design Works platform?
Yeah. I mean, the Aluula, like you said, is super stiff, but it has this really snappy kind of life to it that makes it very responsive. Not only stable, but it makes it very responsive. And so, as you steer it, it recovers really quickly. And because of its stiffness, it enables you to use reduced diameter leading edges, which not only changes aerodynamically some behavior of the kite, but it also reduces the amount of material you're using, including the bladder material, so it drops the weight quite a bit. And the materials already to start is lighter. It's only 80 grams per square meter instead of 140, let's say. But if you can make all the spars smaller, then you can save a lot of weight on the bladder material, because that's the heaviest material in the kites right now. So but basically it does open the door to have a three-strut kite that can handle the wind that normally you would only put a five-strut kite into the environment, And so that was the kind of the goal, was to make a high-end big air kite, but was lighter, was noticeably lighter and faster and more responsive in the steering than the Nitro, for instance, It's there's definitely a place for it, but I think that the interesting thing is that because of there are some brands of kites out there now that you would know that are not Aluula, that guys are using on the tour, that are not hurting because they don't have Aluula kites. And when we first started doing this, people were like, "Oh, if we don't have a Aluula kite, we can't compete," And I've always been under the assumption that I'm not completely convinced that's true. When the day comes that somebody makes a non-Aluula kite that goes out there and starts winning competitions on it, then that whole thing will change. And that's kind of what's happened. It still has its place. It definitely has its place, especially in the larger sizes. There's no question that it's really, really nice. And it is amazing stuff, but why it's really expensive, and it doesn't have a particularly long lifespan, so it requires more care, but you do, when you hop on it, you do get the wow factor right away. You're like, okay, wow, there's something really different about this compared to a Moto X Lite and a Moto Design Works kite. There's no comparison. One's a performance F1 car, and the other one is kind of a whatever, a sporty BMW, but it's not the full-on racing machine, So I think that there's something about it that's still there, but it's more than 6 times the cost of conventional Dacrons, and then the life expectancy is shorter. So, but people say you get the range of more than one kite in because of the stiffness, so you actually get a bigger win rate, so you can own less kites. So there's some truth to that, I suppose. So, but yeah, I think that whole thing is quieted down some. I see some brands still going full on with the Aluula, but if you look now on the tour, it's still quite a bit of Aluula, but the guys, there's a bunch of guys riding kites that aren't Aluula anymore, and they're doing just as good,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we could throw it out there. I think, at least the way I see it, I think the brainchild stuff, right? That is kind of like where I see Ralph basically saying, "We're not doing Aluula, we're gonna do something else," and then I think challenging that notion that you need a Aluula kite to perform, like to have those guys win competitions, right? And so, I mean, it is. I think that it's really exciting to have so many brands with so many. I don't know. For a long time, it almost feels like to me that there was a little bit of a stagnation, that people were using C-shaped kites for big air, right? Which for me was always insane, because how that's a freestyle. It's good for unhooking, but you have no G power. The wind range is not great on those kites. And then, like you said, when the orbit came around, I think actually was initially was the pivot with Kevin Langeray, right? Like he was kind of like the first guy with the pivot, and he was like, you know what? These guys are trying to go out on C shapes. I'm going to take a slightly more high aspect ratio kite, and I'm going to go bigger than everybody else. And then he ended up winning all these quotas, and then the orbit came around, right? And that sort of like again another revolution in the sport because it just allowed the average weekend warrior to buy a kite that they could just loop, right?
Right.
And then now
And those pros all won on stock production kites. There was nothing custom about them or anything.
exactly
So
something you can pry out of the bag, which is really cool. So I really love how the industry is now to the point where there's so many different brands. There's so much excitement around Big Air, which I mean I personally love. And I love to hear your thoughts on sort of like what you think the future holds, not just for Cabrinha itself, but also for the industry as a whole. I do see that it like the focus now is Big Air. When we were talking about C-shaped kites before, I don't even of course there's a lot of people there are diehard freestylers and that's all they want to do is unhook. When I look at the kids here in Praia, they're not even thinking about unhooking. They want to do Big Air. They want to go as big as
right.
possible. They want to loop as big as possible. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where do you think the industry is going, and how do you see Cabrinha? How does Cabrinha fit into that direction of the sport?
I believe that, like we talked about before, that the whole Big Air thing has done a full circle from the beginning of why we all got into this sport in the first place, was to just get to send it big and to fly. That's basically was what was so attractive. I think the first time I saw a guy get a jump on a kite, my stomach just went, like I could feel the butterflies. I was like, oh wow, this looks amazing, because I was windsurfing and a big jump was like 3 meters, and these guys just weren't even trying, and they were getting 10 meters. I was just like, wow. But I think that definitely the evolution of the materials has made a big statement once again with Aluula and stuff. But with other designs like the stuff from Brainchild, Rolf has proven that basically that a good design overshines the actual materials, that he can work that's one thing about a good designer versus an average designer, is the guy who's can make things work with the most obstacles to have to overcome. I mean, there were times when I always was fighting with Pride about using better Dacrons and stuff, and because we were using this stuff from Tajan that was had a lot of elongation, and it was just so hard to work with, and he's like, but this will make you a better designer. If you can make a kite that flies good and performs from this material, then, it's too easy for you just to give you a really low elongation material that's nice and stiff, and then you don't have to think about anything, If you have to go overcome all these challenges, and then you learn so much more about the behavior of all the materials. And I think that a good designer can make anything work, I think, with the limitation. Now, of course, you're going to get a different response time and reaction out of an Aluula versus a conventional Dacron kite. But I don't know. I think that there's still a lot of room for improvements in the materials, which there's been a lot over the last 10 years. Even the materials that we're using in the Light series and the Apex series, those materials, the light one, the one that's the most popular one, which is also some of the other brands are using this material. That material, we actually developed that with the manufacturer years ago. We're the ones that said, no, we're tired of these unbalanced fabrics that were just basically hand-me-down technology from the sailing, the dinghy industry. And we said, no, we need to develop a kite-specific inflated leading edge material. And so let's make it a balanced weave, and let's focus on the elongation along the length of the columns, so it doesn't it doesn't change so much, because you can use less compensation then to deal with the elongation and make cleaner kites. And so I think that there's still a lot of room in the materials. I'm not sure I buy into the welded technology, but there's something to it, I suppose. But it's actually, if you look closely at that, it's still sewn. It's welded for sure, but it's sewn as well. There's actually 4 rows of stitching on each one of those seams, but it does make a stiffer seam, I suppose. And there might be something to that. And it's cool. I mean, where I'm going with this is I think that there's, we're all evolving in the design, but the materials themselves are evolving, and some are instigated by the design team, and also some are the manufacturers themselves are getting more aggressive with realizing that they want a piece of this Aluula pie without the $30 per square meter cost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a conventional Dacron is like $5 or $6 a linear meter, and it's 1.5 meters wide, whereas Aluula is $30 a square meter. So it's a huge, and then it requires a lot of reinforcement, and so it's more extensive and expensive to construct. But so there's a lot of companies that have been trying now to make an Aluula alternative, and none of them have been as good, but there's some stuff out there that's starting to show some promise. North has been pretty active because they have their own facilities to make materials. So they're definitely trying a whole bunch of stuff, which they were when I was there as well. But even the brands that are making most of the Dacrons for the industry, they're doing a lot of hybrid Dyneema polyester fabrics with and without film, and there's definitely still a lot of room for growth in the materials. But I think the designs themselves will evolve, and then they will evolve along with the materials as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the software will develop along with the designs. When we, in the beginning, when we first came up with the bow kites, the software wouldn't draw something like that. It was just too much sweep, and it was just against all the rules we knew at the time. And so the software, this guy who does this programming is just on top of it. And we've been a customer for so long that if I have he sends me the beta stuff all the time, because I use almost every tool that's available in there. So he right away finds out if he's overlooked something, because every time I find out, I find the little bits and pieces that he kind of overlooked. But because a lot of people, they don't take advantage of all those tools in there, and sometimes too much is too much as well. You have to be careful with that. But
absolutely,
yeah, I think for the most part, it's just I think I'm not sure that. Of course, we want to see every once in a while, every 10 years or so, some big, huge breakthrough like the bow kite, and then maybe let's say the Aluula was the last big wham that made a difference, significant difference. But now I think that the designs have evolved to catch up with the Aluula, and now that the difference is not as big as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the designs, it forced people to push the limit on their designs more.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's
I think
I think that's true. That after the Aluula, everyone kind of was racing to try to get Aluula level performance without using Aluula. I wanted to sort of follow up and kind of just talk a little bit more about the Cabrinha aspect of things in the future. I know that after your sabbatical, once John and his partners sort of took over Cabrinha, that they were really adamant about bringing you back in order to sort of have you as the head designer to put Cabrinha, I would say, back on its track in terms of a brand that is going to continue to innovate. And I think John is doing a really great job at really spearheading this effort in order to continue to have Cabrinha, this world-renowned brand, at the top of the crop, right? So I would ask you, what do you think is sort of like the medium to long-term goals as far as Cabrinha is concerned? Where do you see the Cabrinha designs work? Where do you see the products from Cabrinha going in these next few years?
I think that Cabrinha's going through some changes right now where we're really trying to uh, streamline the product offering and reduce SKUs and stuff, and make it more viable for shops and stuff to handle the inventory and stuff. So because you don't, it's just kind of pointless to just have everything that everybody else does. It's I think that we're starting to focus on making sure we do what we do best. And then of course, we need evolution, but we can't just keep chasing a unicorn. And for the ultimate big air kite, let's say, for instance, but there are certain genres that, especially in the big air area, that really need to continue to be improving, because that's where the focus of the sport is right at the moment. But you can't give up on stuff like the Moto XL. I mean, there's places that just don't have wind. And well, they have wind, but they just have light wind. 15 knots is a windy day, and so you can't really overlook how important a kite like the Moto XL is too. So that's going like the Contra and the Moto XL. I call them the last man standing. So they, when everybody else is walking up the beach, the guys that are out on those are still going. And they, if there's a little more wind, they have the amazing hang time because your wing loading is so light. And so it's quite cool. But yeah, I mean, I can't really speak for what Cabrinha will do in the upcoming future, because I think we're going through some changes now. We're trying to trim the fat and be better at what we do and put more focus on the products that we are going to make. But just to have a massive, like some of the brands out there, have the same kites in 3 materials, several brands, and we started going down that way with the Apex versus the light versions, and we're also seeing that this is pointless. There's one that's going to be the best. Why are we doing all these other ones? If we need a price point kite, then we make another kite that's less expensive to manufacture, for instance, or something. Cabrinha is definitely going to, always has, and will continue to put effort into evolution. But I think that it comes in bits and pieces, and it just keeps getting better and better. But it's not. There's no big bang factor every single year that you can expect.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that I think it's cool about your design versus other brands' designs, and I think brands in general, like a very specific dichotomy that I see is low V versus high V, right? So well, I mean, we're talking about Ralph, for instance. So he likes to have his kites with a high V sort of platform, and you, Pat, every single kite on the Cabrinha standpoint is meant to be ridden with a low V, right? So if you can tell us more about the design specifics between a low V bar versus a high V bar, and what are the trade-offs that as a designer you're having to make. Like, do you think there's an upside for having a high V kite? Do you think would you ever make a kite that flies high V? How does that work in the background? Because as a consumer, I know that, okay, this is a Cabrinha kite, I'm going to take a low V kite. Or this is a core kite, I'm going to take a high V kite, right? You're supposed to fly the kite with the bar that was designed for. But I was interested about the design aspect of it all.
Yeah. This is kind of a heated topic of conversation internally right now. I've found with the big air kites and working with Steno and stuff that to get that last bit of improvement on the size of the circle that a kite makes during a kite loop, if you want to tighten that up, it's difficult to do it without the high V, because the high V, it pulls the wingtips in so they fly the fast flying side of the kite can reach higher air speeds and it'll come around quicker. It's kind of like if you were to run let's say that if you were to shorten your control lines by 6 meters, let's say, you know how much faster the kite is, right? So it kind of has the same impact as using shorter lines, okay, but without having shorter lines. The downside is that, for schools and stuff, if the kite does a somersault, you can't undo the crossing the lines while you're in the water. It does reduce power. It does reduce your power delivery for a number of reasons. One is it's shortening the front lines as you bring the V up, so it's actually just like pulling the trim a little bit. But it's also because the tips are flying at a lower attack angle, even when they're both loaded together on the bridle, they tend to produce a little less power. So you do feel right away that it's got less power. But I think that the pros and cons for me with the high V, I tried 30 centimeters, 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, 4 meter, 5 meter, 6 meter, 8 meter, 10 meter, and I've tried it all. And we found that we used to have high V for a long time. All the IDS stuff was at 3 meters, right?
I think this is before my time.
Well, it's funny because I had a friend who borrowed a kite once, and he was riding on an old IDS bar, and I was like, "Hey, can I take that for a ride?" Because I just wanted to try. And I hadn't been on. There was with a 3 meter high V, and I went out on this kite. This was, maybe 5 years ago or something, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this thing is so much faster!" I was just like, I had completely. Haven't used one with a high V for so long, I was quite surprised. But it's kind of weird. So I've been testing everything on both. I don't know if you're aware, but the new bar we have coming out comes with a ring. You can put it in the line connection at 6 meters. So it's got a 6 meter high V option.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is this a 2026 or the 2025 bar?
It's whatever's going to come next. Yeah, okay. I guess it's 26.
Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't come installed because our kites at the moment haven't been developed to be ridden with a high V, but certain kites really love it and certain kites don't. Mm-hmm. But the way you just put this ring into the connection at the 6 meter point, and then you just pass the other line through, and it's really easy to take it in and out. And I would definitely invite you to try every kite, both on high V and low V, because there is a difference. And, not everybody likes it. I fight with John a lot. He's not a high V guy at all. I'm 100% convinced that you need it for mega looping, It just really helps the kite come around and it recovers better from the loop. And you can just get this more pivoty steering from it. But it's not for everybody. But if it's an option, you just take the line out of the ring or not. I mean, it takes like 2 seconds to do it. It's no big deal. But I personally would like to see us develop the big air kite on high V. Because I believe that it helps that last bit of what you need in the kite looping aspect of the big air kites. Because you have to get them around quickly without it yarding you down the line too far, So, but I think, with brands like Duotone and Brainchild and, they've been doing their development, their bridle evolution and development work on high V for the past 20 years. So, their kites actually don't feel very good on low V, I've found in the past. So, we, for the last since I've been back, we're starting to test everything on both, and I'm finding that I can reach the next level in the kite looping aspect on the big air kite, for instance, with the high V. So I think that it's already coming. I mean, it's on the bar, so it's available on the bar. You have to put the ring in yourself. You have to open up that connection and put the ring into the connection. It's pretty easy. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get them to ship it already installed, but I'm pulling teeth with that one because, like I said, right now the kites have been developed on low E, so it's best to just, if you want to try it. But I highly recommend that you should. And I think the day will come where we have kites that we offer that we recommend that you use it on high V. You know, of course, just like the rear bridle settings, we encourage people to try both and see what they think because everybody seems to have their own opinion about it because feeling is half of performance in this industry, you know. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, I think that it's I personally like it, and it makes sense. It does make the kite behave a little bit like you're flying it on shorter lines, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is awesome. It's actually really inspiring to see that even someone who's been in the industry for so long, as much as you have, he's still like eager to learn things and to test new things and to learn new things. That is
Mm.
really awesome. I think a lot of people will. One of the things people will take from this interview is how enthusiastic and how excited you are about testing kites, about talking about kites, talking about products, which is really cool with all the what you've already accomplished in the industry so far. I wanted to thank you so much for your time and for your kindness to take this interview with us. I think people will find it
Yeah,
incredibly helpful, and I really appreciate it. I can't wait to sit down with you soon so we can
yeah,
keep this conversation going about products and about development because you're at the
yeah.
forefront of it all. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the chance to talk with you, and wish you luck with your new center and everything, and looking forward to coming down there sometime.